Welcome to the American Nomad Podcast, hosted by the legend himself, or as I refer to him, the legend in his own mind, Rav Holly.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Wednesday podcast. I am Rav Holly, the American Nomad. This is a podcast where we discuss current events from everything from politics to what's going on in the media to van life. If you know what van life is. If you don't know what van life is, stick around. We'll tell you what it is. What is going on, everybody? Hopefully everybody can hear me. Can everybody hear me okay? Hey, Random Nomad, what is going on, buddy? We got volume today, hopefully. We've been having technical difficulties. My green screen got corrupted somehow, so I was having to scramble here at the very last to get it removed because it just wasn't working properly and I couldn't get it fixed. What's going on, Detox D? How we doing, guys? How's everybody doing this week? We're going to be discussing the Breonna Taylor. On the B camera over here was where we are now, but we're getting ready to hit the A camera. We're going to be discussing today the Breonna Taylor verdict and what's going on there. Without further ado, what do you say? Let's get this show started. Wow, chicken, wow, wow. All right. Looks like we got switched over to A camera. Running a little bit of a delay there. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully good. If you notice, we're running this red screen. This is just red lights because, again, really quick, I had to scramble because my green screen got corrupted somehow. You could literally see through the brim of my hat. And I worked on it for like an hour trying to get it adjusted and just wouldn't adjust. So I finally had to remove everything really quickly so I could get ready to do the show. I was more worried about volume and sound as usual, and then wasn't expecting to have any problems with video, and so that threw me off. Volume is good. Awesome. Good to hear that for a change. Guns OG, how you doing across the pond, buddy? Random Nomad, good to see ya. Detox D, what's up, brother? Good to see you. Got a few people in the room here. I guess everybody's probably up to speed on the current events that's going on in Louisville, Kentucky. It's on the screen right to the right side above the American Nomad emblem. I have put a chat up there, and it's supposed to show the chat on the screen so I can read it on the screen. And I worked on that, and I think that's what corrupted my green screen. I worked on that, but as you can see, there's no chat on the screen, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. I thought I had that working. Trav Man has already hit me with a $3 super chat. Thank you, brother. I totally appreciate that. It should show an alert. There should be an alert that pops up for that super chat, so we'll see if that happens. All of these bells and whistles I'm working on, but if you see this... If you look over to the right, you can see this box that's kind of on to the right side of me. I believe it's right for you guys. It's right here. There's a box right there, and it's supposed to show the chat. All the room chat is supposed to be in that box, but evidently I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I thought I had it working. But anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much again, Trav Man, for the super chat. Totally appreciate that. Actually, Trav Man, English Bulldog Eve, how are you doing? Trav Man actually hit me up with a request for a subject matter for the show. So we're going to be probably talking about that on Friday. I'd actually meant to talk about it today, but with the Breonna Taylor case coming to a conclusion, it kind of trumped what I'd planned on talking about, which Friday's show, if no other crazy breaking news happens, we're going to talk about the another stimulus check. And where are we today? Where are people? I actually know there's a lot of people that are actually hurting today these days because they don't have they've been out of work. They don't have any work, and one $1,200 stimulus check just doesn't cut it for 5-6 months, when I think everybody's bills are way past that this day and time. I mean, $1,200 doesn't even cover the cost of most people's rent or house payment here in LA. I'm going to see really quick, since that chat box isn't working. I wanted to see if it was going to work, and since it's not working, I want to see if I can actually remove it really quick, guys. So give me just a second, because it's driving me nuts. Wanted to see the chat in there. I don't know what's going on. The chat works on the website. It just doesn't work. Just doesn't work on the. Just doesn't work on the. There we go. Should be off now. It just doesn't work on the site or on the video itself. I have to see what I'm doing wrong there. Got to be doing something wrong. Anyway, so let's see. Hey, Matilda. Wanted to give a quick shout out, really quick. Thank you, Trav Man, for the $3 super chat. I want to say thank you to Matilda for the $20 PayPal direct donation. And Trav Man actually hit me with a $35 donation last episode around. So I want to thank you guys so much for your support. If it wasn't for you guys, I'm not sure I would keep on doing this, but you guys really make it give me hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel for everything we're doing here. Let's see. Travman says, yep, don't like how things are going in this country, but what can you do about it? Travman says, I'm lucky to get $650 for rent plus electricity you got to pay, and then got to pay my other utilities. Plus you got to eat. That's another thing. You got to eat. And food, I don't know about food where you are, Trav Man, but food here in LA is going up. I was looking at, I just walked into a 7-Eleven early this morning, was looking at 7-Eleven, and I noticed prices. I don't know why that is, but I do. I notice prices, and when prices change. And I noticed things that I was buying probably 3 months ago, or not even that long ago, probably a couple of months ago. Everything seems to have went up like $1. Not like a few cents, but like right at $1. A lot of these things have went up $1. There's some like chips that I used to like that came in these specialty $2 packaging. They've went up 39 cents. They used to say $1.99, and now they're $2.39. So everything's going up. Yeah, guys, if you would smash that thumbs up button, I would really appreciate it. Random Nomad says, I pay $700 for rent. Yeah, that's a pretty good price, Random Nomad. $700 for rent. So a $1,200 stimulus check for you would really work out well. But for most of us, well, for me, I mean, $1,200 is fine for me as well. But there's a lot of people that $1,200 doesn't even scratch the surface. To fill groceries in my house costs $412. And that's just for you being a single guy, Trav Man? Or is that you and someone else? Food is not cheap. That's, a lot of people, they're giving us a second one. Yeah, hopefully we'll see. I never got the first one. I went to the website and put in for the first one, and it said that I wasn't eligible. And it gives you no reason why you're not eligible. It just says you're not eligible. So I wasn't eligible for that first stimulus check. But anyway, let's get on with today's topic of the show, which is the Breonna Taylor case. If you haven't heard, the Breonna Taylor case has just come to a pretty much come to a close on the indictment of the officers. I think there's still a federal investigation going on. And if you didn't hear, I guess a week or 2 weeks ago, the city actually settled the civil case and rewarded Breonna Taylor's family a $12 million settlement, which was unprecedented for that state, the state of Kentucky. But the Attorney General for Kentucky had a press conference and basically said that after the investigation concluded, he investigated everything, and he is not. They indicted one officer, but it was very minor charges, and it was the officer that I guess shot 10 rounds through a side window or a patio door. That I don't believe any of those rounds hit Breonna Taylor, but they went through Breonna Taylor's apartment into the apartment next door, where there was 3 occupants, a man, a pregnant woman, and a child. Luckily, none of them were hit, but they could have been. So they basically charged that officer basically with just a negligence charge. But the 2 officers, Breonna Taylor was actually hit 6 times, and it was one of the officers that was breaching the front door that's one bullet, evidently, from the medical examiner's conclusion, was the fatal shot, and it was fired from one of the officers at the front door. I can't remember his name, but it wasn't the officer that was shot in the leg by Mr. Walker. It was the other officer that returned fire. Yeah, I don't believe it was manslaughter. I think it was just like a negligence, because the officer that's actually being charged, he didn't shoot. None of his rounds hit Breonna Taylor, from what I understand. But yes, it was gross negligence, to say the least. To say the least. And the officers, you know, I if you remember, I did a couple episodes ago, we talked about the Breonna Taylor case and the New York Times article that came out about it. And I'm on the fence, you know, because I understand both sides of it. If you're looking at from the police perspective of this whole thing, this whole mess is what it is. You know, the cops are just doing their job. They're doing what they were told to do, right? You know, that's what their job is. This was a narcotics investigation from Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend, a Mr. Glover, who had served time in a Mississippi prison for doing drugs and had moved to Kentucky and continued doing exactly what he was doing in Mississippi that sent him to prison, which was peddle drugs. And the city of Louisville was cracking down on these drug houses and this drug activity that's going on in their city. So you can understand that. It's not like he was just peddling weed or you know, these were heavier narcotics that he was in charge of, or he was pushing out there in the streets. So you gotta look at, you know, the city of Louisville's trying to crack down on that. And for Breonna's, you know, she was still wrapped up with Mr. Glover. Now, Mr. Walker was the man that she was presently dating, and he was the one that she was with the night that, and he shot the police. He's the one that shot at the police when they were beating on the door. There's one witness, if you listened to the testimony from the AG from Kentucky, who was a black guy, he actually said that there was a witness close by that said that they did announce police. I've listened to what he said, and he said that they lightly announced police. He said they were banging on the door. He was upstairs. He was in the apartment upstairs and was leaving the apartment upstairs with a child, I believe. And as he exited the apartment that he was in, he heard the loud banging. So he stopped and stood there and listened to the loud banging that was going on downstairs, that was going on the door. And just before they breached the door, he heard someone lightly say police. And when they lightly said police, that's when they hit the door to bust in the door. And I do believe that was a major reason why this entire shooting happened, is because they were going for a no-knock warrant, which is what they originally had, but they actually didn't have a no-knock warrant on Breonna's apartment. But I think they, just to cover their butts right at the last moment, I think the police actually did very, very lightly announce police, because none of the other neighbors heard them say police. But the one guy that was upstairs, the black gentleman that was upstairs, leaving the apartment upstairs, said he did hear him say lightly police one time. And I think that was a major part of the problem. The other part of the problem was, if you read the New York Times article, was the police were actually had Breonna Taylor's apartment under surveillance, because her apartment had a separate warrant. There was 5 different search warrants that was issued for 5 different residents, I believe. And I think 4 of them were basically trap houses, which are like drug peddling houses. These abandoned or really dilapidated houses that they're dealing drugs out of. Breonna's apartment actually had a search warrant for it in regards to her ex-boyfriend, Mr. Glover, who was peddling drugs, was also giving Breonna all of his money to hold, because every time he got arrested, Breonna is the one that would go down and bail him out. And she had also been surveyed in her car, stopping over at these trap houses and going in, probably to see Mr. Glover at the time. And so she had been in surveillance video and photos being at these houses where these warrants were also being issued. So that's how her apartment got tied into this, and there was a search warrant issued for her apartment as well. And that is what wrapped her up into this whole thing. One place where the cops really failed their duties is they had her apartment under surveillance. And the evening that they served the warrant on her apartment, Breonna Taylor and Mr. Walker, the new boyfriend, who was an upstanding citizen, who was licensed in the state of Kentucky, a licensed gun owner and carrier, Mr. Walker and Breonna actually went to Texas Roadhouse to dinner and had dinner and had a date night, had a great date night, and came home. And Breonna thought she would probably get called into work because she was no longer an EMT. She was actually a emergency room assistant now, or something to that effect. And she was expecting, they came home early because she was expecting to get a call to come into work at 11 p.m. And when that call didn't come, they ended up just turning on a movie and on Netflix or something like that, and watching a movie, her and Mr. Walker, while they were in bed, until the police started beating on the door. Now, where the police are very incompetent here is the police had her apartment under surveillance since that afternoon because they knew where they were going to be serving this warrant. But the police did not know Mr. Walker was in the apartment. They thought they were serving a warrant on a single female's apartment. Another reason they were not expecting there to be any gunfire or anything, because they thought it was just this 26? I can't remember how old she was. I think she was 26. That single female in an apartment. So they weren't looking at any kind of they weren't looking at any kind of gunfire being shot at them when they breached the door. But that's exactly what happened, because they failed to see Mr. Walker get out of her car when Breonna and Mr. Walker returned from Texas Roadhouse from dinner. They didn't see him. So there's a lot of negligence in the police department. And then the thing that really keeps me on the fence about the whole thing is, if you saw the video that I talked about, the 18-year-old kid, they got pulled over by this same narc division there in Louisville in 2018. That video really made me irate when I watched it, because this young man was the homecoming king. He had graduated with honors. He had several scholarships to different universities, and he was full-time employed. 18-year-old kid, full-time employed, great mother. His mother is a black woman that works in the court system. The cops pulled him over there in Louisville for making a wide turn, and then they rip him out of the car, basically make him get out of the car, handcuff him, put the dog on the car. The dog alerts on the car when it's his mother's car, and she is a officer of the court. And then, so it's all a ruse. It's all BS. There's no weed in that car. There's nothing in that car. And they're saying the dog alerted. That's a lie. It's a lie. So I have a huge problem with the Louisville Police Department in general, just because I know that attitude circulates in that police department. Just for the simple fact is, once they realized that this 18-year-old kid was not he had never been in trouble, he had never been arrested, no juvenile record, the cops still acted like he was the problem and his mother was the problem. They continuously say, yeah, everything ends up on social media now. Everything we're doing is ending up. It's their attitude that was the problem. If you haven't seen that video, you need to watch it. I will make a blog post about it or something. It was in the last Breonna Taylor blog that I posted. And when I watched that video in 2018, I was literally irate because they pulled this kid over for making a wide turn. And then when it came down to it, the cop actually sat there and discussed to his mom and admitted to his mother that they weren't even looking for speeders or traffic violations. They were out there on that specific part of town looking for drugs. So they pulled this kid over for making a wide turn, and then they issued him like 2 citations when they basically bogusly pulled him over. They got sued for that, and they had to settle. And when you see those officers, it is racist. That the way those officers were acting was completely racist. They pulled that kid over for being black, for driving black, and then they basically violated his rights, pulled him out of the car, handcuffed him for no reason, because he was scared and talking to his mom on the phone. Those cops are a problem. We need to get rid of those cops. And what I fear is that attitude is embedded in that police department in Louisville, Kentucky. It's driving. That kid. He made the mistake of driving while black, and he basically told these cops, he goes, "Man, it's my one day off. I just wanted to go to the store and get a Slurpee. I was just going to the store to get something, get a Slurpee or something." And these cops made a mountain out of a molehill. They could have very quickly realized, but no, they called the drug unit, the dog unit. The dog searches the car, and it was all BS because there was no drugs or drug paraphernalia in the car. They lied. The cops lied. It doesn't get any simpler than that. They lied the entire thing, and then they sit there. They know they're on their body cameras, and they tell this is all being recorded, but they have no idea that this is actually going to be it's going to end up in the public eye and people are going to see it. But just to cover their butts, in the video you hear them saying stuff like, oh yeah, it's all on camera, everything's on camera, to cover themselves, to make it like if it does ever get seen that they're the righteous. They're the righteous, they're doing everything by the book. When you look at that video, anybody that looks at that video can see exactly what's going on in that video. Matilda says, yeah, crap surveillance team. I completely agree with you. But I don't know that it was just a crap surveillance team or if it's complete incompetence from the Louisville Police Department. But then if you look at the other side of it, I'm up on my soapbox about the Louisville Police Department, and part of it's because of that 2018 video. But then if you look at the flip side of it, the cops are just doing their job. You know what I mean? It's the city that wants to get this drug. The city is the one that wants to get this drug problem, cleaned up in the city, and you can't blame them for that. But then you have, cops just trying to do their job, and I think they get complacent. They weren't expecting Mr. Walker to be in there. They definitely wasn't expecting Mr. Walker to be in there with a gun. So I understand the police perspective on that. They weren't expecting to breach the door and get shot at, and one of the officers actually did get shot. So, they're going to return fire. If the police are if they're shot at, they're going to return fire. But then that's my problem with these no-knock warrants. I mean, in this country, the police should not be able to just bust into your door with a no-knock warrant. I just absolutely do not believe in no-knock warrants under any circumstances, unless it's a child that's been kidnapped, maybe a husband or, or a spouse that's holding a girlfriend, under dangerous circumstances, those kind of things. I understand the police breaking in, to save somebody, because somebody, like little Wayne, who shot himself, when he was 12 years old, and the police busted down the door to get to him, to take him to the emergency room. If Breonna Taylor's apartment had been the one where the drugs had been peddled out of, now I agree with a warrant there, or like the trap houses where they were actually dealing the drugs. Those I can understand the no-knock. I understand the warrants because they're trying to catch them in the act of dealing these drugs. And if they knock and announce it's the police, all of these guys are going to run flushing this stuff down the toilet. That's where these no-knock warrants come in. So I understand that aspect of it, but I don't understand it on anybody that's, maybe in the case. Breonna was just holding money for this dirtbag that she'd been dating on and off for 6 years. And that's what got her killed. If she had cut ties with this guy and left him alone and just dated Mr. Walker, she would have, she'd probably be alive today. But because she was still going by this trap house, it drug her into this whole thing and put her name on the list for a warrant. And she is still holding money for this Mr. Glover. Because when Mr. Glover died, there is jailhouse interviews with Mr. Glover talking to another one of his girlfriends, his actual baby mama, telling his baby mama asking her to come bail him out of jail. And she's like, I don't have any money to bail you out. Where's your money at? And he's like, he goes, Breonna. And she goes, what? And he goes, Breonna got it. And she's like, well, get it from Breonna. She goes, I can't get it from Breonna. Breonna's dead. And she goes, and then the baby mama goes, how much money does she have? And he goes, well, I gave her like $6,000 one time and then $8,000 another time. So this dude doesn't have a job. Where's he getting this money at? So Breonna knew this money was drug money. And this guy's dealing drugs, giving the money to Breonna, because every time that he gets arrested, Breonna is the one that would go down and bail him out of jail. So that's what got her mixed up in this entire thing. So she's not 100% innocent because she knew what was going on. Unfortunately, in these lower income ethnic communities or black communities, when these things are going on, these good girls that don't have anything to do with these bad guys, they get attracted to these bad guys, these hoodlums, and they end up, dating them, marrying them, being baby mamas and everything else, when they are not actually, they're not part of it, but they end up being a part of it because they're dating these guys. Gunzo G says, read something the other day. El Chapo is going back to court because he said his trial's unfair. If that was anybody else, it would be straight no. I think it's a bit suspect if you ask me. Yeah. Let's get back in the room here, see what people are saying. Travman says, gas prices are not helping either, costing me $30 in cash just from where I am to get groceries. Yeah, I understand that all too well, Travman. Diesel here is like $4 a gallon, so you can imagine. Yeah, I'm not sure about the El Chapo thing, Guns OG. I haven't really kept up with that. What I can say, as far as El Chapo is, part of the problem is this whole war on drugs thing. I think if we were to, in the United States, I know it's very controversial, but if we were to get rid of this war on drugs, basically legalize everything across the board, I think most of this, Breonna Taylor would still be alive because all of this illegal drug dealing is going to go away. There's not going to be all of this illegal drug dealing, which a lot of that stems in Mexico because Mexico is thriving off of, the cartels are thriving off of the drug industry here in the United States. They're manufacturing drugs in Mexico, South America, Central South America, and they're shipping them to the United States. Travman says, that sounds like a lot like the stories of my life, but I was the one driving and did a U-turn and got pulled over, and all I had was Adderall in my high school car. Yeah, I actually knew someone. That got pulled over and got arrested for, was it DUI, if I remember right, or DWI, and then got arrested because they had a bottle of pills. They were prescription pills that were in their purse, but the prescription wasn't their prescription. Does that make sense? And I've done that before. I've had people that have given me like like some painkillers because I was having pain, and then I didn't want to go to the doctor because I'm very anti-doctor or hospital, and so I call like an ex-girlfriend and say, hey, do you still have those painkillers? Because I'm having pain. And they give me the painkillers, and I would carry them around with me in that bottle that they gave them to me in, not even thinking that if I got pulled over and searched, I could go to jail for having prescription medication that wasn't prescribed to me. So, there's these weird laws that they get you. Adderall is still a felony unless you have a script. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm talking about. Random Nomad says legalize weed because weed is 90% of the drug lord's cash. Yes, I agree with that completely, Random Nomad. If anything, we should definitely legalize weed. But I think we should legalize, I know it's a very controversial thing to say, but I think we should legalize pretty much everything. Maybe everything but meth, because meth is really running rampant, and it's killing a lot of people. But the thing about it is people are going to do the drugs just because it's against the law. Doesn't make people not people aren't going to do it just because it's against the law. So it's a lot. The reason it's illegal in America is because it's a lot of revenue for these police departments. That's how these police departments are buying these full heavy military vehicles. It's because of all of this money that they make each year because of drugs, because of people that they arrest on these drug cases. That's where a lot of this money comes from. And when they talk about defund the police, that's the only thing I can get behind as far as defunding the police. Like if you make any kind of comment about defunding the police, you have all of these people that are leftists jump in there and go, oh, no, it's not defunding the police. It's, spreading the money around. And, so social workers and, low income families and all of this, they get they get their needs met adequately. So, the police can actually concentrate on doing their actual job. No. When they say defund the police, they actually want the police off the street, is what a lot of these people. It's what a lot of these people that are naively don't understand. A lot of these people don't want there to be a police present. They want the police to go away. And a lot of those people that are doing that are criminals because they don't want any ramifications for when they break the law. They want a better chance of breaking the law and getting away with it. So that's my next topic is the hypocrisy of people that say defund the police and then call the police, which is none other than crazy leftists. I used to think she was one of the hottest females on the planet, Alyssa Milano. So if you know who she is, she was she was in Who's the Boss? What with Tony Danza back in the 80s or 90s. She played, I think, Tony Danza's daughter, and Who's the Boss, or I can't remember, but I think that was the first thing I saw her on when she was actually a little girl, and then she grew up and was in she was in movies and all kinds of different TV shows. And anyway, she lives here in LA. She's very active on Twitter. If you haven't never seen her Twitter account, she's very active on Twitter. She's very anti-Trump, has been from the get-go. She's turned into one of these crazy Hollywood leftists and now she's been on this whole BLM defund the police kick. And it just so happens a couple of days ago, there was a kid in her neighborhood, and I guess she lives out in the valley somewhere. So if you don't know what the valley is, there's a lot of woods and stuff out in the valley, in these big gated communities and stuff. It's very hilly and kind of foresty around in some of these areas. And I'm just figuring that's probably where she lives. If you get out around Calabasas, Agora Hills, stuff like that, there's a bunch of like wilderness out there. You see a lot of coyotes out there. There's even bobcats, mountain lions. But anyway, this kid was in her neighborhood, and he was actually shooting squirrels. He had a BB gun or a pellet gun, and he was shooting squirrels. And guess what our anti-police, defund the police, Alyssa Milano did when she saw this kid shooting squirrels with his pellet gun. She called the police, and it just, the hypocrisy of that, it would make me laugh if it wasn't so cringeworthy. But just the simple fact that she's up on her high horse talking about defund the police on Twitter, and then she sees a kid hunting squirrels with a freaking pellet gun, and the first thing she does is calls the police. Let's get back into the chat here. Let's see. Matilda says extingent circumstances don't require a warrant if severe risk to a victim could happen to be delayed. Yes, that's very true, Matilda. So basically what Matilda's saying there is the cops do not need a warrant. Say, for instance, a man takes his wife and kids hostage, and there's risk that great bodily harm are going to come to them. The police can actually breach the door and come into a place like that. But it's a very slippery slope if they do it. They don't do it for, unless they really feel somebody is in imminent danger. Matilda says criminals love the defund the police movement. Their criminal activity will be so much easier. Yes, that is what I'm trying. That's what I'm talking about. The simple fact here in LA and in New York and a lot of these heavy leftist cities, the crime rate is through the roof. I had some guy the other day that's not even in LA. I made the comment because some girl, a girl that's on my friends list. I don't even think she's right. I don't even think she's conservative. But she was talking about the defund the police thing, and this guy comes on, and he's not. I don't even think he was in L.A., but he was a photographer as well. But he comes on and goes, "Oh, what you don't understand?" He goes, "What? You just say defund the police, and there's no vote, and all of a sudden there's no police, and the criminals are doing everything." And he goes, "That's not what." He goes, "That's not the case." And then I had to get on there and correct him and go, because I made a comment, and then he basically called me out. So I got on there and set him straight. I'm like, "No, buddy, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. As soon as they started chanting defund the police here in LA, do you think the cops are doing their job, or going to be wanting to do their job?" Where I was at over in South Central LA, I can tell you by Roosevelt Park over there used to be 4 or 5, maybe 6 LAPD units that basically would randomly go around that park. They would literally drive in the park. If you've never seen this, some of these parks in LA that can be high crime areas, people dealing drugs or doing things actually in the park. You actually have the LAPD unit will actually enter the park. There'd be like a little drive thing, break in the curb where you can drive up into the park, and these cops literally drive. I'm not talking about on a sidewalk or a road or anywhere. They're literally driving on the grass through the park. And about once or twice a day, you would see an LAPD unit driving through the park, just checking everything out, making sure everything was cool. Then you would see cops, just circling. You would have 4 or 5 LAPD units. You would have probably 4 or 5 LASD units, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, because there's a metro station right there. So that metro station is the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department runs the transit police. So they are in charge of all of the metro train. So there was a metro station there where people get on and off the train. So there was always a Los Angeles Sheriff's deputy sitting in that parking lot, and there was usually 2 or 3 that were roaming around that area. So there was a heavy, heavy, heavy police presence. So I had my Snap-on truck, which is a retired Snap-on truck, parked over there for a year and a half. And people would go, oh my God, you're out of your mind, dude, being parked in that truck over there, because you're going to get jacked. Somebody's going to break into your truck. I never worried about it because there was so many cops. There was so many cops around there. And, it was super, super safe, because criminals don't go around, are not going to be going around and breaking the law right there where the cops are. They're going to look for an area where there's not as much law enforcement. So I always felt super safe right there in that area, even though it's one of the most dangerous areas in the city. I never really felt any threat of my truck getting broken into or anything happening. As soon as we had the riots here in LA, and all of the looting and breaking into the stores, and then the whole defund the police movement, within a week and a half, all of those units, all of those cop units, they all disappeared. And I would see cops in that neighborhood, around in that vicinity. I'd go to Chipotle. There would be 2 or 3 cruisers sitting outside the Chipotle, and they'd all be in there eating. And sometimes it was LAPD officers, sometimes it was the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department officers. But I would see those guys, and girls, officers, and they're eating, and, they'd all meet up, and all that, there'd be 2 or 3 cruisers with 2 cops, and they'd all be in this one Chipotle, which was right, just right down the street from the park. And you always saw a heavy police presence. As soon as the riots were done, they were all gone. The only police that you would see is every now and then, maybe every 2 or 3 days, I would actually see a Los Angeles police car drive by on the street where I was parked, but I never saw them going through the park anymore. I never saw them. There was no police presence there at all, except for one Los Angeles Sheriff's Department truck or car unit that would be parked there at the metro station. And when there used to be several units that, they just roamed around that immediate area, they all disappeared. And within 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks of that happening, I had 2 scumbags trying to break, was it 2 or 3, trying to break into my truck, and with me in it. One night they busted the window, they were going to break in, and when they busted the window, they didn't realize I was standing there with a shotgun, and they took off running. Another night, a guy crawls up underneath the truck, is looking for the catalytic converter to saw off and steal. I sneak around, got my freaking shotgun pointed at his abdomen. He doesn't even know it. And then I just kind of nudge him with my foot in the leg, and he kind of crawls out and looks, and he's like, "Oh man, I lost my flash. He said he lost something, and it rolled under my truck." Just that kind of BS. But that all happened within a couple of weeks. And the crime, the rate has shot through the roof in LA. That's why I'm down in Orange County now. I had to get the hell out of there, because it went to hell in a handbasket quick. And a lot of these people are not old enough to remember. I see people even in their late 20s, 30s, early 30s. They don't remember what LA and New York both were like in the 80s. I do, because I grew up in the 80s. And, there was 2 movies for both of these cities with Kirk Russell. One was called Escape from New York, and one was called Escape from LA. And both of these cities were known to be crime-infested, drug-infested, just crap holes back in those days, especially New York. New York was it was called Fear City. It was the most dangerous city in the United States. And there's stories about people being mugged, which is what they call getting robbed in New York back in the 70s and 80s. There were stories about people getting mugged, and a NYPD squad car would be driving by as they're being held at gunpoint, and the cops would look right at them as they're being robbed, and they would be tourists, and they would be getting robbed, and the cops would look right at them and then just look away and keep right on driving. And that's what we're going back to. That's exactly where these 2 cities, for certain, LA and New York, that's where we're headed with all of this defund the police talk, because nobody's going to want to be a police officer. And the people that are the officers, the good officers, the sad part about it is I've said this before, the good officers, they're turning in their badges left and right because they're smart enough, they're intelligent. There's other things they could go do that's not near as much of a headache. And now if something goes south, they're really in danger of getting killed. Because if something goes south, they really have to hesitate about using their weapon because they have this other thought now that they have to have in the back of their head, like this has to be justified, because if I shoot this person and kill them, I could go to prison myself because we're under such scrutiny now. So there's a good possibility that you're going to see these cops getting shot and killed because they're going to be scared to draw their weapon. They're going to pull a taser out when a guy's got a freaking loaded gun. You know what I mean? So you have all of these cops that are getting out. They're getting out, and, you know, before all of this defund the police, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and the LAPD were both having a very hard time getting new recruits. And this was way before the defund the police thing kicked off. Let's get back in the room here. Random Nomad says the 1992 LA riots. Yeah, so if you don't know Random Nomad, I've said this in other podcasts, but where I was at over in where my old SVO Enterprises, the garment manufacturer I worked for, where that was located, was right off Florence Boulevard. It was May and Florence Boulevard. Florence and May was here and Florence was here. So it was the so Florence, if you don't know, it was Florence and Normandy where the 92 LA riots kicked off, which was just right down the road from where my work was. The funny thing is, when the riots were going on, though, I was over there, and it was probably the safest place in the city because those people knew what it was like to burn down your neighborhood and all the stuff that didn't come back. There was a lot of area over there that didn't have any major, there were blocks and blocks that wouldn't have a McDonald's or a supermarket or a bank or anything. It's all starting to come back, but for a long time there wasn't anything over there. Let's see. Yes, Minneapolis is kind of like that as well. It's very much like that. But it didn't used to be. I've been in Minneapolis many times. Minneapolis used to seem super safe to me. I've been downtown Minneapolis, and it seemed like a very nice town back in when I used to go to Minneapolis. Just going through the chat here, see what I missed. Eve says Brooklyn Bulldog, English Bulldog says, so is that the garment district? It's not the garment district, Eve. The real garment district is in downtown LA. That's what they consider the garment district. But where I was at, we were 4 miles south of LA, and there was a whole garment facility there that was that's all they do is garment manufacturing. There's several different companies in one compound. It's like a big compound. It's like a factory compound, and you have one dye house that all they do is dye clothing, and then you have like 2 or 3 seamstress shops where all they do is sew all day. They would be, anywhere from 10 to 35 women in just in this facility, just on sewing machines, sewing all day. And then what we did was screen printing, and that's mostly what we did was screen printing. And we had sewers on staff at one time, but they had left right before I started there. Yeah, the Rodney King verdict was what sparked the 92 riots in Los Angeles, was when the cops got off for the beating of Rodney King, which, at that time, the LAPD was very, 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 very troubled. They had a lot of bad cops. And over the years, the LAPD has done a very good job of hiring a lot of minorities. And you see more minority police pretty much in LA than you do, white cops these days. But there's a big controversy going on right now with one of the Compton Sheriff's Department divisions. Is they're saying that there's there's some whistleblower that's come out. I'm not super educated on this topic because I haven't really looked into it that close. I've just heard hearsay or talk about it, but evident because of the two sheriff's deputies that were shot in Compton here a week or so ago, there's evidently a whistleblower that's come out and said that there was like a gang in the sheriff's department, and you ended up doing these things that were just like a gang to get initiated to be in the sheriff's department gang. I don't know how legit this is, but it's being discussed. They're talking about it. The authorities are talking about it. So evidently this gang actually did exist. And what I say to that, though, is like I said, I really haven't looked into it. But my take on that is when you start hiring these minority police officers that are coming, some of them may be coming from these gang-infested neighborhoods, you kind of get the same thing. You know what I mean? These Hispanic guys are, they're going to make a gang in the police department. Trapman says North Minneapolis, then Forest Lake, Minnesota, now Wisconsin. Yeah, I've all been all up through there. We've talked about that, Trapman. I've been all through up in that area, and it's really nice area. Like anywhere in Minneapolis, I don't remember anywhere that was just really super, super crime infested. I'm sure there was, but I just don't remember it. I remember Farmington Hills, and it's been a long time since I've been in that area, but I remember like Farmington Hills, and I remember I was up in like northern Minneapolis one night, and it was like a Friday night, and I just wanted to get a beer. I'd been working all day, and I got on my phone, or not my phone at the time. I think I got on, I can't remember where I got on to find, but I found this bar. Maybe it was at the hotel. I was at the hotel, and I asked for information from the front desk or something for the concierge, and I asked, is there a bar around here? And they go, oh yeah, there's a bar on certain place. And then I went to this bar, and it was the craziest thing. I've seen a lot of crazy things in this country, but I go to this bar, I get there, and I pull into the parking lot, and it's a house. It's a freaking like an old Victorian or ranch style, or like an old like Forrest Gump, but a lot smaller than that house. But like it's like this white house with like a porch and everything, and you go in and it's a freaking house. I seen the same thing, the exact same thing when I was in New Hampshire. But I was in this little tiny town in New Hampshire, so it made more sense. But this was like in Farmington Hills or something, and it was this freaking house that was the bar. And you go in there, and sure enough, man, it was packed. I mean, there was probably 200 people in this place. I mean, it was packed. And then when I was in St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is a college town, I went to a bar there, and that bar that was in a basement underneath like an apartment building, which was crazy to me. So I go looking for this bar. I can't remember how it was, because I used to have, back in those days, I had like Microsoft Streets 98. Does anybody remember that? And I had a IBM ThinkPad that was installed in my truck, my work truck. And so it had street maps. So that's a lot of times the way I would find stuff. But I remember I found this bar, and I'm like, I'll walk to this bar and have a beer. And so I go walk into this bar, and I'm looking for a bar, and there's no bar. And I'm like in this residential neighborhood. So I'm like, well, this is weird. But there was like, I could hear like a party going on. And in a like one of the basement windows, I could see like a beer sign for like a Miller Lite, like, one of those fluorescent tube signs you'd see in a bar. And I could barely make it out, but I could see like the stairs going down underneath this apartment building. But I could hear the party going on down there. And so I'm like, is this where the bar is? And I was scared to go down there because there was nothing saying it was a public entrance or anything. And I didn't know if somebody was just having a party down there. And I didn't want to be a party crasher and like walk into somebody's party. But finally I got the gumption to go down there and check it out. And so I creeped down the stairs and got to the bottom of the stairs. And sure enough, there's a guy standing there, taking an ID. And I'm like, so this is the bar. I said, I've walked around this place like 4 times. I walked around this whole block like 4 times. Didn't realize this was the bar. He goes, yep, this is the bar. There's actually a bar like that in Long Beach as well, Long Beach, California, but it's very well known that it's a bar down there under the apartment complex or apartment building. It's at Linden and Broadway in downtown Long Beach. This one was in a very quiet residential neighborhood, like there was nothing going on anywhere. Brooklyn Bulldog says we are at $3 a gallon. Yeah, diesel's a little bit more than that. Or it was the last time I got diesel. I haven't got diesel in a while. Random Nomad says St. Cloud is an all right town too. Yeah, I enjoyed my time there. When I used to get to travel the country a lot, there was a lot of places, man, I really enjoyed. And one of the craziest things, one of those states was Mississippi, because I got to go into every little nook and cranny in Mississippi, and I had a really good time in Mississippi back in the day. Travman says, everything Rav has talked about tonight, I've lived a part of it but different in flight details. Copy that, buddy. Oh, another thing I was going to talk about really quick, we're 57 minutes, so we only got a couple minutes left on the show. But I walked into, this is something I've seen in different stores or different places here in Orange County probably the last month, is signs in the windows when you're going in the front door, and it says no cash accepted because of the nationwide coin shortage. We are not accepting cash, which is very, very strange. I mean, even with the COVID thing going on, things are a little strange, but it's just really strange to me that these regular retail businesses are refusing to take cash. That's a little spooky. That really wigs me out a little bit, because if that was to happen across the board, there's a lot of people that don't have a credit card, that don't have debit cards, that don't have bank accounts. How are they supposed to get something to eat? Doesn't even make sense. Like, if you won't take cash, and I'm not talking about some, independent convenience store. I'm talking about Popeye's Chicken, Wendy's, stuff like that, they have signs, no cash accepted. Travman says Forest Lake is considered southern corner of St. Cloud, Minnesota. I don't remember really Forest Lake, but I remember being all up in there. It was really nice. Wisconsin Rapids. I mean, in Wisconsin, I can't name off as many cities in Minnesota. I remember Austin, Minnesota, which is right south of Minneapolis. But then you had you just had the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I would spend like a week in the two cities there, and they're really right next to each other. So I would go from south all the way up north, like I've talked about before, all the way up to Moorhead, Minnesota. But Wisconsin, I remember a lot of those towns, and Michigan too. Anywhere from Escanaba to Iron Mountain, and then down to Appleton, Wisconsin Rapids, Manitowoc, Milwaukee, of course. Yeah, I've been all through that area. Had some good times there. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of American Nomad. We just hit an hour mark, and I'm really working on keeping these things to an hour. So if anybody wants to watch the playback, it's, if you look at a video and it's an hour and 45 minutes, but if it's just an hour, a lot of people will watch the replay, hopefully. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of American Nomad, and we will see you guys back here Friday, 7 p.m., the good Lord willing. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining me. If you didn't hit that, Trav, man, you are something else, dude. Thank you so much. Trav, man, just hit me with another $2 super chat. Totally appreciate that, buddy. I hope to see you guys back here Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time. Hopefully we'll be talking about in a little bit more detail about the other stimulus check, because I know a lot of people Yes, 9 p.m. Central Time, and what is that? 10 on the East Coast, I believe, Eastern Standard Time. They're 3 hours difference from here in Southern California. Anyway, guys, hope to see you back here Friday. Have a great couple of days until then. And like I said, if everything works out right, we will be talking about kind of the economy and the other stimulus check. I know here in California, what they are talking about is everybody getting $900 extra on that's on unemployment. But that still remains to be seen if that happens. My biggest fear, though, really quick, with all of this talk about added money, is what I've heard is there was $3 trillion that was pumped into the economy since this whole COVID thing started from the Federal Reserve to keep everything afloat. And I'm not an economist, but I've always kept up kind of with this stuff. And yeah, just in Cali, Random Nomad, the 900 for unemployment is just a California thing. So, but I've always kept up with the economy, and I've read these things, through the years about if, something like this were to happen, because it's the people are the one that support the government with our taxes. It's not the government that's supporting us. So my question is where is this money coming from, and what's going to keep it from? What's going to keep us from having a huge recession later on? That's what I worry about is super inflation hitting us like nobody's business. Where a gallon of milk's like $15 because of all this money. It's going to catch up at some point, is what I worry about. But we'll talk more about it on Friday, and I hope to see you guys then. Peace, love, and chicken grease.
Thank you for listening to the American Nomad Podcast. Until next time, keep looking up, because that's where it all is.